Hi everyone, this is Manish.
This is Rashi, and we are the co-founders at Rezo.ai. So it's primarily a AI-powered CX cloud for enterprises.
Did you know that the first employment of your host, Akshay Dutt, was in a call center? Yes, that's right. Akshay was hired by EXL Service from campus as a management trainee. EXL Service at that time used to employ 5,000 plus people, and it was a massive operation spanning multiple buildings in Noida. Today, that same level of output can be achieved with just a room full of people with the help of AI and chatbots. Don't believe me? Listen to Akshay's conversation with Manish and Rashi Gupta, the husband wife duo behind Rezo.ai. Rezo is a technology company that runs call centers for brands using voice bots. If you want a first hand understanding of how AI is disrupting traditional service businesses, then this is the episode you must listen to. And don't forget to subscribe to the Founder Thesis podcast on any audio streaming app.
To simplify this a bit, you can treat us like as a virtual contact center. You reach out to a contact center for all the sales related calls to generate all the leads. In our current capacity, we are 100 people strong, working equivalent to 20,000 warm bodies, and we are roughly doing around 30 lakh calls in one single day. In today's world, if you look at it, sometimes we don't realize that how efficiently we could be. But the idea is if you're not efficient, the end product is basically reaping is either the enterprise or the customers, which is doesn't make sense, right? So we are enforcing efficiencies in the call centers, taking away something which is a recurrent job that Rezo can do. If not, then bringing in efficiencies to the human agent. And end goal is basically helping enterprises do more at lesser the cost. And the construct here is that we will be able to do a lot of outbound, inbound calls, just like what a human would have been doing. We do collections, we do scheduling of appointment, anything and everything that a contact center would have done. We are now doing it with the power of the bots.
Is it there must be like a spectrum of, let's say, simple calls to complex calls? Till what stage in the spectrum is Rezo able to handle? Because I'm sure there would still be some cases where you still need human callers. Where's the line for you right now?
The construct is very clear. Calls which needs human intervention, right? We don't try to attempt that. Imagine there is a death in the family, you're trying to get an insurance, get some money. You don't want to be talking to the bot. You are middle of the road, right? And you are stuck with your family, 2 a.m. It's a mix that we bring on the table, right? So where you think of time where Rezo can pitch in, can do the needful, we bring that. Processes from a simple to a mid-level processes is what Rezo automates. Something which needs an human intervention, we let the human do the job. And then for the rest, we also have a combination that we pass on the ball to the human agents. If Rezo is not able to understand and maybe too probing, if Rezo still doesn't get the context, we pass it to the human agents. And then there is a whole feedback mechanism, machine learning at the back end, which is constantly learning.
Oh, how do you define, like you said, simple to mid-level complexity? Give me some example of what's like a mid-level complexity. Let's say if I'm calling to change my plan to Airtel, for example, would that be something that Rezo would do? Or just define it a little, like what is the current capability? What kind of complexity can it handle and what it can't handle?
I think what Rashi was mentioning about is one, if there is some kind of emergency, it requires a human touch. And that human touch is something that we are saying right now the AI should not be kind of interjecting on those emergency situations. Everything else, it should be handled by the bot. Typically, any situation, any call where the average handling time is, let's say, less than 3 minutes, is handleable by the bot. Anything which requires much larger engagement per se, that's where the probability of the agents coming in will be helpful. So that's the kind of way it is.
Yeah, that's a useful definition of 3 minutes as the okay. And why is it 3 minutes? Is it that the more longer the conversation, the more harder it is to contextualize something said at minute five with something said at minute one? Like you need to contextualize.
3 minute is more like a ballpark kind of a scenario. What also happens, Akshay, is at times the agents will have to look through the systems, look up the different systems, and give the answers, and that looking up in different systems might take long. What happens with when solution like Rezo gets deployed, we do API integrations, backend integration with all the systems, and the response rates are very quick. We have seen AHT getting reduced dramatically when solution gets deployed. So
And AHT refers to
average handling time.
handling time.
Right. So, and average handling time comes reduced dramatically because now instead of switching between the systems, looking up into the CRMs, the system is able to get that exact information through the APIs, the backend integrations, and is able to serve the customer rather quickly.
You have an agent with infinite knowledge in a way.
Absolutely. An agent with infinite knowledge, agent with infinite cloning capability, and 24/7.
So, can you take me through the journey of starting Rezo just for the listeners? So, you and Rashi are not just co founders, but you're also husband and wife. So, how did you guys meet? How did you decide to take the plunge? A little bit of that journey.
Sure. We met during our college days. We both were studying at IIT Delhi. So we started our first startup, the earliest startup, we started in 2012. And that was into data analytics, that was into some sort of machine learning per se. And we had it for close to a year and a half. We had a product.
That was a product or a service? Like, what kind of startup?
It was a services, but we were also working on seeding a product at that point of time, which was more on the media mix modeling and media measurability, marketing measurability across all channels, including the outdoor media. Yes, so we did services as well. And we realized with time that it was way ahead of the curve. We ended up talking to different companies, telling them as to what machine learning is. And we were getting compared against the average formula of Excel. How are you different from that? I think it was like writing on the wall. Probably we missed it. So we ran it for a year and a half. Didn't see much headway there, and that was when we had to pull the plug. We get took up the respective jobs, and then again, as part of our jobs and different responsibilities, we saw this opportunity of unstructured data coming into the industry, which is like a roadblocker for the enterprises. Anything which is structured can still get consumed very easily, but the moment you have unstructured data, it's a roadblock, and you have to employ humans to handle it.
Give me an example. What's an example of unstructured data coming in?
Unstructured data would be voice, would be free text, would be documents. Anything which is not numbers is unstructured data, which is not consumable. You cannot inference from it directly. And that's what we saw as part of the business operations. Almost all the enterprises generate this data, and in order to consume it, they have to have humans, they have to have people solve that thing for them. So it's like a very simple example. You want to take a feedback, you want to take an NPS score, you want to take a CSAT. If you can do it over the forms, that's okay. But a larger volume, you'll have to call them up, understand whether what is the feedback, what is the voice of the customer, and then someone will have to punch it in into their CRM in a 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 band, give a score, and once the score is received is when the workflow will continue. So that's where we realized that why can't we look at, given the evolution of technology of AI, cloud, why can't this be solved? So we started deep diving into it, and that's where we realized it might not be a 100% solvable problem, but it's a problem which can be solved to a great extent. So rather than solving 100%, probably we could solve 80% of the cases. That was the leading hypothesis with which we started. And and I think we started in 2017, 18, spent a couple of years in terms of getting the product definitions, the business requirements, because you cannot just take the hypothesis, you cannot take the technology and just sell it like that. It has to have the business meaning to it, because ultimately someone will have to sponsor, someone will have to give the money to it for it. So we spent good 2 years making the business viability out of it, the product feature set out of it, a lot of small pivots, a lot of features here and there, putting the things together, stitching it together. And that's where we found the product market fit where the value is high. And then that's what we've been selling in the market the last 3 4 years.
So when you both quit, you were CTO of RateGain when you quit, and Rashi was at WNS. You quit without any business on the horizon. There was no like prospective client or a lead where you thought, yes, okay, I can start generating revenue in a couple of months. Like it was purely the idea that let's build this product, even if it takes us 2 years.
Typically, one would expect something to fall in place maybe in 8 to 12 months. I started doing some odd consulting jobs just to make sure that the pressures should not mount beyond a certain limit. So it's you have an IPL, you are limited over match, a required run rate should not go beyond 12. So for first year, 1 year, we were like putting the things together, trying to see what can be done. But then just to make sure the pressures don't mount up, I took some consulting jobs on the side to keep the ball rolling. And one thing we were very clear, Akshay, from day one, that we do not want to get into the services side. There were ample of opportunities for us to pick up the services projects. And services is a very different ball game, and we were very clear on that. We don't want to go that route, and we want to go to the product side.
Between the two of you, who was trying to get business? Like who was selling and who was building?
So I think, given the kind of background and expertise that we bring on the table, I was more on the tech side, Rashi was on the data science side, and the solutioning side. And collectively, we both were selling because I would say we were both equally novice and equally specialist in sales. So it was like we have to go out, divide and conquer. Let's both sell. And with time now, I think Rashi has picked up the sales pretty well. So at the moment, it's Rashi who's selling. And so it's like anything in the front of the office, Rashi takes care. Anything back of the office, I take care.
Amazing. Did you start by selling what you're selling today, or there must have been a journey where you would be selling something, and over time, based on what you heard from customers, the product evolved? Just tell me about that. Like, what were you selling initially? What response did you get, and how did you finally discover product market fit?
What we started essentially was more in terms of automating or having the chat as a automating the chat responses. Then we move towards the email automation, social media automation. And all these nuances were something which short text, long text, their understanding, conceptualization, semantic analysis. So all these things is where we spend good amount of time. Incidentally, voice was the last major segment that got added.
Because voice would need more time to build. It would be like more time and investment to build voice capability. Text is sounds relatively easier to implement.
Actually, it's, I would say, voice in the end didn't take us that long. It was much faster than we anticipated, but somehow we undermined the potential of voice.
So when you were selling text, I'm assuming it would have been a crowded market. There are a lot of other players also offering text chat automation and social media listening. So is that what led to voice, or what led to discovering that voice is the niche which you can dominate?
I think competition has never been a concern for us. I don't want to sound ignorant or arrogant here, but competition has never been a concern. Reason being, two major reasons. One, the market is super huge, and you can have 10 unicorns operating in this space. So, if there is so huge a market, competition is not a concern. It will be a concern maybe 3 years down the line, but not today. There is enough land to grab. What really we were looking at is what is the value that we are getting for those enterprises, right? If I, for example, do a chat automation, what is the ROI the enterprise is getting? Let's say I go to a 2000, 5000 crore company and I talk about a chatbot, and they are giving me 50,000 rupees a month, 1 lakh rupee a month. The value ROI they're getting is 1.5 lakh, 2 lakh, 3 lakh rupees a month, and of which they are giving me a portion of it. The question was, why am I not able to give a bigger value to the enterprises? That was the question I was solving. If I start giving a bigger value to the enterprise, I can go and ask for a bigger pie. That's the problem we were solving. Because it's like whenever you are in a B2B space, enterprise space, you have to give a bigger value. If you are just a superficial or a periphery service provider, you're like a fly on the windscreen. You might stick onto it for some time, but you might get replaced anytime.
Okay. Okay. And did this come from customers asking you for voice, or you only started checking with customers, hey, would you be interested in voice?
In the first leg, it was our customers said, you know what, we like the team, we like the concept, we like what you're bringing on the table, but we would want to have a single vendor which can handle everything. And in a way, our clients pushed us into it.
Okay. Okay. Got it. And I believe Maruti was like the first big client for voice for you.
That's correct.
Okay. Tell me about that. What was their ask and how did you deliver it? And
So essentially, we applied. So Maruti runs incubation program with the name MAIL, Maruti Automobile Innovation Labs, and it's a program which kind of enables startups to apply, and they would then want to imbibe the innovative startups to come work with Maruti's different verticals, different teams, and do something big, something different. And at the same time, it probably also allows a balancing act for the enterprise in terms of the size they operate at and maybe a combination of little agility. So honestly, we applied in that. I think we were in cohort two, if I'm not wrong. So we were in cohort two and we applied for it. And luckily, or I would say destiny, as it would say, or whatever it was, we got selected. And we were one of the winners of that program. And that's where we got onboarded. We got a paid pilot. And the results of the paid pilot were satisfactory for Maruti.
Maruti wanted to do this NPS survey through voice.
Yes, one is doing an NPS survey, but it was also about getting the VOC, voice of customer. So the calls that were happening, what were the customers talking about?
And this was like after servicing, like when someone gives their car to a Maruti dealer for servicing, after that, a call goes asking about the experience.
One is that was one. Second was also in the normal conversation, in the customer support conversation. What were the customers talking about? Were they really happy? Was there any hidden dissatisfaction aspect?
So that was like monitoring the human calls that are happening and creating a dashboard based on those calls, like how effectively the call was handled, what was the customer's emotion, was he positive or negative about the brand and things like that.
Absolutely. I think your sales pitch is better than mine, I believe.
Okay, okay. And Maruti wanted this to be multilingual, right?
Yes. So essentially, any business, if you see in India, and not just Maruti, but even otherwise, what we have seen is almost 60 to 70%, unless and until any enterprise or a company is regional in nature, typically 60 to 70% of volume lies in Hindi and English. So for everyone, the first iteration of deployment is do this in Hindi and English. Once this milestone gets achieved is when the regional languages are very critical. So if I was to say till date, we do around 10 languages across India, all the major languages of India we do.
From the technology side, what is the product doing? Is it essentially a text to speech engine and vice versa, like a speech to text engine, and then that text is analyzed for intention? Is that what it is?
The reality is that it's like there are nuances in the speech engines. Whatever engines are available in the market, and we have a couple of our own versions of speech engines. So we have to create an ensemble layer on top of that and see which engine works the best in what scenario. So we do that. Then
What is a speech engine?
speech engine is text to speech. So it's ASR, you have speech to text and text to speech. Those are the speech engines. Then obviously you have a NLP layer which kind of works, and which is our own proprietary in-house.
And what does NLP do? What's the full form of NLP? What is it?
Yeah, so what we do under the NLP engine is the we hear the voice, and this is at the back end of the product. There are a lot of these elements, a lot of features which are embedded in the product. We understand it could be understanding the free text, because what we enabled the whole system is to understand the voice of the customer and just get it to thrash that data and bring it to the enterprise key. This is not what you wanted to hear, like five things that you wanted to check, but your customer is also talking about this 50th thing and the 60th thing that you never even imagined. So that was what we wanted to bring to the enterprise. With that as a thought, now you imagine you are anything that you built as a function on the voice or on the chat. You are basically, this was the backend enablement that we wanted, and we wanted this to be enabled in all vernacular languages. Now the complexity, when you look at the landscape, right, there is anybody can talk whatever. It could be any verbatim, right? Linguistic comes into play, slangs comes into play, short forms comes into play, anything and everything, because it's like what we you and me are talking to figure that context. So, and then basis that, there is this whole generative AI where you basically have to revert in a manner. For example, I may just say my remote is not working, right, on behalf of a brand. Like the brand, the customer is saying this, now the brand needs to handle it in a way, right, and we are the one which are handling on behalf of the brand. So all interpretations, right, so the backend engine has to be so powerful to be able to get the gist of the customer, do an intent identification, figure out from the backend of the enterprise what kind of a response, what kind of a API do I have to fetch to be able to give out a response to it. Now you do an amalgamation on this simple construct, right, with all vernacular, with all sentiment, with all emotion embedded into it, right? So it's a, in simplistic, like Manish said, the base was that, but then you built in the complexity of the sentiment, of the emotion, of the open verbatim, of the slang, of the background noise, because we work with a lot of people who are, so you're driving and you're talking to the bot, right? There is a lot of this honking, road noise, vendor, all sorts of noises are there. You have to cut that. So that is where, and the bot should be still be able to interpret everything in a unified manner and should be able to roll appropriately. It can't do any hang-ups in between. We did chat, we did build the engine on the chat. We started interpreting chat either on social or on the website. Then with the ask of our brands that we were working with, they said, yeah, this is good, this is what you have built is good, but can you take it to the next level? Can you bring in speech? Can you bring in, we said okay, speech. We got into voice. Then they said, can you do vernacular? Then we did vernacular. Now can you do vernacular? You make it open ended, right? We don't want a 1 2 3 sort of a bot. You make it open ended, let's hear. So that is how the complexity for us kept happening. And then now the ask is, bring in variations, bring in generative AIs, bring in, incorporate the chat GTPs. Then the other ask is bring in, add emotion, add sentiments, add tonality, interpretation. How the product gets carved is basis our deployment and basis when we see the ask coming from our brands that we are doing for a rollout, and the competition is where, and you look through that. If you do this, then you are there, right? So that is here where a lot of debating internally we do basis the ask, and then we put forward the ask to the product team and the tech team. This is what we are looking at, and then we build this whole science together.
There is a handover between the speech engine and NLP engine, or they work together? Like the speech engine would convert it into text, and then the NLP engine looks at the text, or
It goes seamlessly, right, because the revert has to happen within couple of seconds, right? So the whole embedding is, the speech to text will happen, interpretation will happen, API calls will happen at the back end, generative AI responses will happen, and then a revert will go to the customer. So imagine all of this, like the way you and me are talking, it has to happen like that, so it goes seamless.
and if it is vernacular, then it's translated to English for the NLP engine, or the NLP engine is processing in the vernacular language. Like,
It's processing in the vernacular, because then once you do the interpretation, the context changes. So it's good for if you have to do one or two pieces, I think it may still work. But if you have to look at a broader picture, what we are trying to solve, like open-ended conversation, it will be a showstopper. Initially we tried that, but after a point of time we realized that this is not working out, so we rolled back.
it will sound very unnatural. Like translation removes the flavor of the language from it. Okay, okay. And so the speech engine for vernacular language, did you have to build this or was it available? English, of course, there would have been a lot of work done and would be available, but how did you build capability for, let's say, something like Gujarati, for which you may not have had an off the shelf speech engine available or something like that? Or just help me understand that.
There are two things here. One is the corpus is available. I think the Indian government is putting a lot of effort towards building this corpus. There are universities working in silos. All this time they're working in silos, now coming together and set up a collaboration amongst themselves along with the government of India. So the corpus is getting
By corpus, you mean the data set, like labeled data.
that's it. That's it. Correct. So that's getting built up. Then there are this data set corpus is also available in different, as I said, with universities, online it's there. In fact, so much so that I know you'll be a little surprised. Why not the movies? The closed captioning already done. What better data set would you want? So all the movies that are there in the market and someone has put in the effort or has been paid to create the closed captioning manually. That's the corpus you need.
Okay, got it. So you were able to develop the speech engine for vernacular using the corpus which exists.
Yes. So we were able to build this to some extent with this corpus available. We also leverage some third party engines which are there, and a mix and match is what kind of is working for us.
See, the mantra is not to say no to business, right? When the business is coming, you don't have to say no and you have to figure out a solution. If you have something built in, you roll. If you don't have built in, you don't shy away from figuring out how can you leverage third parties, competition, whatever it is, right? But the idea is crux is never say no to business, just keep rolling. So that is what we have adapted and moving on.
And you were talking of some like things on the roadmap in terms of incorporating Chat GPT. How would that become a feature in the product? What would that imply?
See, it's we're testing it out, right? Because the idea is we're also working with a lot of NBFCs, with a lot of financial organization, insurance companies, banks. So we just did a few weeks back. We've rolled out a version, incorporated something which is already existing. We're testing it out because it can't be open ended. Tomorrow it's going to be talking something, right? And then the price will be paid by the enterprise, right? We have done the solution. So the construct is that a huge, in fact the government themselves, right, there is so much investment going into seeding this, but then on the other hand there is a larger investment which is now getting, the grants have been issued to basically also put the boundaries, because if you allow it to talk it can do anything. So
What does it look like, this Chat GPT powered version? What does it allow the bot to give answer in longer sentences and show more empathy and emotions while talking, or like why incorporate? That's what I'm trying to understand. What is the value it will add? How will Chat GPT add value?
For example, if a user, someone, let's say Manish, goes to a bank's number and trying to play a prank and start ordering a pizza. I mean, our Rezo system and obviously what the permissions we have from the bank. I mean, because as a part of the rollout, there are certain guided rails within which you have to operate. So our system will say, sorry, I will not be able to help you out with this. Whereas ChatGPT will say, पिज़्ज़ा आप चेकबुक के साथ लेंगे अकाउंट खुलवाओगे तो पिज़्ज़ा मिल जाएगा दैट काइंड ऑफ
Okay, slightly more humanistic, quirky responses. That's what Chat GPT will allow.
yes. And what we also, again, this is again a hypothesis and probably will get tested with time, but remember in the beginning we said a 3 minute AHT is a limit. This is something which might help go beyond 3 minute boundary.
Okay, because you're able to engage people more.
That's correct. So it's same as if you see a parliament session or if you see a keynote by anyone and which is let's say half an hour or 1 hour, they need to put some jokes in between to get everyone's attention. So similarly, chat gpt, one use case that we see at the moment is getting that engagement factor there.
Okay, okay, interesting. And currently you are using generative AI already, like that you have been using rather. So generative AI here refers to the fact that you are generating the responses of the bot. Is that what it refers to, or what is generative AI?
So, generative AI essentially, overall, if I was to say, is to generate content which doesn't exist. So, it's not,
In response to a prompt.
that's correct. So, typically, ChatGPT has two components. One is semantics or understanding the content, intent, context, whatever you might want to call it. And then, basis that, come up with some solution, some answer, which chances are very high doesn't exist in totality. Because if it just gets you or fetches you a solution or an answer which was there in one of the websites, then it's a search engine. Then it's not a generative content. But if it can, with certain thesis, hypothesis in the system which it has been trained on, it can generate the content and give it to you, assuming pragmatism isn't there to that level and it was not copy pasted from any website directly. So that's what generative content is all about.
Okay. And this you have been using from like when you started generative AI, because your answers of the bot are essentially generative AI.
Yes, so that's correct. So we were having this versions there, and it was fine tuned or perfected for the B2B, for the enterprise space. Because there are certain boundaries in which you will have to operate when you work with enterprises. You cannot go beyond, you cannot go all over the place. In fact, I just want to cite an example here, and without naming the enterprise, what happened was they rolled out a chatbot on ChatGPT on their website, and within 2 days, they had to take it down because the answers it gave were not in lines with the legal compliance of that company.
This was a chatbot for answering customer queries. So take me through your pricing journey. When you started, how did you price it at? What did you learn about pricing a B2B product? What do you price it at today?
So, as I was saying, in the beginning, when we started, the pricing was the best we could charge was 50,000 rupees a month, 1 lakh rupee a month. And what we saw was obviously for any company, and again, as a startup also, but for any company, the ticket size, the average selling price or ACV, which is annual contract value, you have to try and maximize it. So we tried doing it, and what we realized was the value that is coming on the table for the enterprise is not that exorbitant or is not what is in lines with what we are looking at. So we had to flip it, and we started doing a value based selling, and which really helped actually get a much better ROI to the enterprises. And basis that, even our ticket sizes started increasing.
What is value based selling?
Value based selling is all about what is helping the enterprises derive and understand the overall value that this offerings that we have brings on the table. So one is, it's same as if I say that I sell you a pen. I sell you a pen for 10 bucks, right? Probably you'll say, you know what, I have more pens, but this bug 10 rupee pen I might buy it, but what if I typically lose pens? I have that habit of losing pens every 1 week, every 2 weeks. The ink starts leaking and this and that. So one approach is I start selling you 10 rupee pen, and I say, you know what, I'll sell you now, I'll sell you again after a week, I'll sell you again after a month. That's one approach. Second approach is I try and study typically what is the average shelf life of a pen with you, right? And I see on an average you need a replacement every sixth day. So what I'll say is, you know what, don't worry, you use as many pens as you want. This is the package. You want to change the pen on a daily basis, please be my guest, right? And obviously, my instead of charging 10 bucks, I'll be charging you a different structure. And you will say, you know what, this is too expensive. I'll help you understand as to typically last year's what you spent was this amount. I'm giving you a discount over that because since I'm selling you a bigger ticket size, so I'll not my unit price will not be $10. My unit price might be $8 or $7. So actually I'm helping you save 30%. And your pain point goes away. That every time you have to think again about buying a pen, which pen to buy. It's a win-win for you. It's a win for me because I have a bigger horizon with you.
Got it. Got it. So in your case, you would probably look at the salaries that they would be paying to agents and how many of those agents you would be able to replace through Rezo. That would be the basis of pricing
Let me try and explain as to how we typically take it. We say, what is your total cost
of running a call center.
of running a certain function,
Like say,
running a certain service? Let's say of capturing the NPS score. What is your total cost associated with getting the NPS score? What is the delay that you get? What is the opportunity loss you have? What are the pain points you have? We start with that and then see what all we can solve for them, right? The solution solves what other things that we can help solve. And basis that we say, what, today you are spending, let's say you're spending 50 lakh rupees on getting the NPS score structured with a delay of 1 week. What we bring on the table is something which will cost you 5 lakh rupees real time, and it's a plug and play, and you deploy it and you forget about everything else. You'll get the results within a matter of, let's say, 2 hours, whereas you are getting something in 7 days. And things like, was it really transparent, because it could have been managed, whereas this is like an automated system, everything there, all the no human intervention. So it's more about comparing as to what it is as a status quo and what we bring on the table and the value that we bring on the table. And in this, just there have been ample of cases where, for example, if for example they're spending 50 lakh rupees today annually, and we when we did our math and we saw that best case scenario I'll be able to give this service for 45 lakh rupees, I tell them, do not change. I mean, there are ample of cases even today. In fact, I had a call with one such customer a week back where they wanted automation rolled out, and we said, "Sir, do not change it. What you are doing is the right way of doing it. Do not deploy solution of Rezo. In fact, I would suggest do not deploy from anyone, because the size that you operate at, the use cases you have, automation solution will not be able to help you out, and you will not get the ROI, and nor will the implementing partner, and it will be burning the bridges 3 months, 6 months down the line. So it's better to be upfront.
okay, you sell directly to organizations or you work with implementation partners, and is there like a channel sales model or is it direct sales?
At the moment, we are selling directly to the enterprises, but we do have some channel partners, SIs, there who are started selling now. Little early in the construct, but yes, it's picking up.
And like once you sell, let's say this NPS survey, how much time does it take to go live? Like how long is that onboarding journey? Because you would need to collect data from their systems. I mean, you would need to read data from the systems. You would need some access to the phone numbers. You would need some sort of a calling line set up or something. Like how does it happen? What's the onboarding journey?
So our typical onboarding journey, if the enterprises are ready, the decisioning is made, and they have the information, API, documents, data handy. So I'm discounting the delay because of the enterprises or our clients. We can get started anywhere between 2 days to maybe 1 week's heads up.
Okay. Okay. This kind of selling approach of value based pricing, doesn't it reduce the speed of sales? Because every time you go to a client, it's not like you can give them a rate card, but you have to first ask them, get.
No, again, we do give them the rate card also. I'm not saying that we don't. Our rate card is fixed. We have a certain range
What's the rate card based on? What is that like?
on the complication of the use case, the volume that is coming in, what kind of commitment we have. So rate cards are fixed. So again, it's fixed in the sense it's in a certain range, and it's a very well defined. But so I'm not saying that we inflate our prices basis the value. We don't do that.
But you're able to demonstrate value to get the conversion.
Correct, correct. Because so our rate cards are in the similar range. It's just that this approach helps the enterprise come to the conclusion faster. So actually, this approach helps selling faster.
In addition to what Manish said, what we bring on the table is they may have a current process and they are sitting on large data. They are doing things in a certain way. When we come in, and as Manish was saying, that our rate cards broadly, it's a volume based pricing, it's a fixed sort of a structure which is there. What we try to, we don't.
Which is like a per minute or something like that.
Yes, it's a per minute, depending how the larger the volume and all of that is. But broadly, when you go to the enterprise and you talk to them, it is very important to understand they want to automate a process, or they are looking at something was running in a certain way, and they are saying यार मेरे को तो इतना ही response मिल रहा है या इतना ही लोग मेरा पिकअप कर रहे हैं. What we bring on the table is the success. Like today, the selling is majorly on a success base. Today, you are getting X as output. I will be able to take it to 2x or 3x in such and such time. And that time duration, as Mani said, our deployment times, once the client is ready on the basic construct, we, unlike a lot of my competition where the deployment time could be 3 months, we do it in flat 10 days, right? Along with the UAT built in. And success is what we drive. We say that if you today are able to get X as an output, we will be able to do it 2x 3x depending upon the complexity of the problem. And that is one. The other thing, that when we talk to the enterprise, when they are just talking, there is a lot of base, right? These are your customer base, and you are making revenue from your customer base in a way, right? You're serving them, you're making revenue from that. There would be always an untapped bet that you don't even know you have not attempted. So when Rezo comes into the play, we are more data, right? We, our decisionings are majorly powered by data. Where are you sitting today? What is your current input? What is your current output? What's broadly your cost? There's not too much of conversation what you're thinking that this is going to be taking a lot of time for me. No, it's very straightforward, because you just say, sir, aaj aap kitna, where are you today, and where are you wanting to be? Can you do this with the current bandwidth or the current infra that you have? The answer is no. Okay, so we will come in, we will look through your data, and we will get you from here to here, and you can measure the success. So that's the construct. And when you put that construct, irrespective of who's my competition, right, it goes, these discussions goes much faster. And once they generate faith in us, yeah, I mean, they know, they value my data, they're able to hear me out, they're able to understand. That is where they say, this is my untapped customer base, I have not even looked at this base, can you do something about them? So then when you do a lot of co-inventing with them, and you talk to them, you figure out this is what it is, and it doesn't take a long, because it's, the idea is, if you start looking at the data, you start looking at the problems that they are facing, right, and you propose simple solutions, not very complicated, simpler ones, you're able to roll in a much quicker manner.
Does the product get customized for each customer? Let's say male voice, female voice, or stuff like that. What all customizations happen?
So you can define that. We have seen that we were working with a lot of driver base at certain point of time. Now, when we were working with the driver base, they were not liking the female voice. It was not just working out. So they wanted to hear a male voice telling them instructions. Another time we were working with a brand where collections were happening. So we got a mandate that only the women voice is going to work. Bring in a women voice of from age 30 to 35. Right? That's the kind of, and they also, because they have to run these units for a very long time, they know this much clearer than what you can do. So we amalgate and put things together, and this agility that we have to be not hard coded everywhere and listening to the client and bringing things, this basically is playing in our favor.
And so these are like available off the shelf voices, like 30-year-old Indian woman voice is available off the shelf. Does it sound human, close to human, or it's obvious that it's a machine?
No, no, it's pretty human. In fact, we have rolled it both in the urban and the rural areas. The rural latches on to these voices beautifully because it's easy. We are rolling it out at the farmers, right? People hearing about various policies, about what is happening, कौन सा seed कब लगाना है, क्या मौसम है, कैसे. You can ask anything and everything. As far as the urban is concerned, what I can sense is, for example, unlike you being hogged by the multiple calls during the day, if you make one single call for an insurance policy and then you get 10 calls in a day, till the time you pick up the call, you answer 15, 20 questions. This these kind of calls are happening. Like, we leverage a beautiful concept which is a smart contact center strategy. Once I've understood the DNA of Akshay, I know आप कब phone उठाओगे, what are your plus and minus, I know your transactional history, right? And this is what we bring on the table. It's not just conversation ki ek messaging hai jo mere ko brand ki taraf se aapko dena hai.
Okay, interesting. And particular language, like when the call starts, somebody would maybe the bot would speak in a language, and the customer responds in, let's say, bot speaks in English, the customer responds in Hindi, so that changeover happens on the spot. The bot will also start. Okay.
Yes, immediately. Yes. So the introduction is basically in one or two languages because you can't do it in all languages. But if for example, if the call is in Hindi and the other guys started to talking in Telugu, for example, so the switch will happen in Telugu and the rest of the conversation will be in Telugu.
Okay. And then you have data that next time you should use Telugu with that customer. How does the cost compare to a human agent? Let's say maybe a human agent would give you maybe 300 minutes of calling time a day into 20 days. So maybe say 5,000 minutes in a month. What would 5,000 minutes of Rezo cost?
So basically, the cost reduced dramatically. Let me answer it this way. And also the fact that I would say ballpark, yes.
Less than half?
Depends, again, depends on the complexity, depends on the what kind of a volume is there. A lot of factors. It could actually be lesser as well. It ranges anywhere between, I would say, a 40% to maybe a 60-70%. Depends on a lot of factors.
A cost of a human would be at the very least maybe 25-30,000 a month, right? Because you also have the cost of providing a laptop and the space, etc., etc. So you're
It's a setting cost, it's the training cost, it's the hiring cost, it's the onboarding, it's the offboarding, it's the PF, ESI, everything put. There are then the TL cost, then the QC cost, everything put together. So there are like multiple factors. In fact, I'll give you a very interesting perspective as well. I was talking to someone in terms of helping them derive, as I said, value based, ROI based positioning. And this person was telling me, what we pay 20,000 to an agent. I said, 20,000 you pay, but that is not your cost of operation.
Yeah, it would be double of that probably.
Yes, but then obviously you can't just say double. You have to justify. You have to. One thing that really came out was, as per the government law, you have to give them certain leaves. The leaves could be easy around 25 to 28 offs in a year. This is besides the Sundays, because typically any employee gets 18 leaves in a year, plus there are festivals, plus you have 52 Sundays, there are medical leaves, there are paternity maternity leaves, compassionate leaves.
And then health insurance and the office infrastructure and
Your typical sitting cost can range anywhere between 1,000 rupees to maybe a 10,000 rupees per seat. Again, depends on a lot of factors. Then you have the bosses above TL to maintain this entire hierarchy. There are account managers, there are electricity cost, internet cost, as you said, laptop.
and in your case you're at half of what it would cost for a human to be running the same
Yes,
thing.
one thing which again is, I want to really call it out, is the first impression or the first thing that comes to the mind is job security for these agents. And interestingly, When we work with these enterprises, not a single agent has been let go.
They are redeployed for higher value work.
They are redeployed for higher value work, in fact, which essentially requires their upskilling and upskilling, I mean, training more.
I want to understand as a business how you're doing. What is your current ARR? What kind of customers do you currently work with? Customers from which sectors? What's like your biggest sector from where you have customers? Is it like BFCs, or is it like automotives, or just give me an idea of what your revenue and the breakup of revenue looks like?
So we currently focus on automobile and BFSI and telecom. So three verticals that we're focusing on at the moment. Currently, we are purely based out of India and operating in India. We have around 15 paying clients today, another five in the pilot stage.
Who are some of the clients that you could name? Are you at liberty to name some? Like Maruti, of course, we've already discussed.
So Maruti is there. We work with L&D Finance. We work with Tata AIG. We work with Delivery, Usha.
Delivery would be like when there's a customer who's expecting a parcel, so a call would go and say that your delivery will come at 11 o'clock, or like feedback for the delivery or something like that.
So delivery, it's been a non-voice function, non-voice automation for them. So yes, but yes, the use cases are those straight line use cases. And in terms of where we are in terms of our revenue and others, so we are, let me put it this way, we are targeting to hit 10 million ARR USD by end of this financial year.
Okay, amazing. How much is that in crores?
It'll be around 80-85 crores as a run rate. And in terms of our otherwise health, we are a EBITDA positive company. We are a profitable company. We've been we've been profitable for last 8 quarters now.
Wow, amazing. Okay, and this includes your salaries also. Like,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely everything.
do you need to raise funds? Are you planning to raise funds?
Yes, so we are in discussions to raise capital. Some early stage conversations are
But why? You are profitably growing.
right. Just set up our US subsidiary, and what happens is now is at the growth stage. You need to kind of experiment. You need to invest in the sales and marketing engine, and also as part of the growth, the experimentation needs to be quicker, which requires capital infusion, and that's the reason why we kind of raising capital.
But your product is already mature, right? It's
Product is already matured. It's already there in terms of the scale is there and everything is there, but still the feature sets will keep evolving, keep improving basis the customer feedback. So
okay. Like going beyond that 3 minute handling time.
absolutely. So what happens essentially is, for example, recently the feature, not recently, but sometime back, the feature that got added was about switching the language on the fly. So for example, you and me are talking in English, but एकदम से मैंने हिंदी में बात करी तो शायद आप भी हिंदी में बात कर लोगे. Now we have designed the system in such a way कि bot भी switch करता है.
And the voice sounds like the same person only talking.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Absolutely.
Are you getting used for sales calls also, or it's mostly just like data gathering?
We are doing a lot of sales calls as well. We help setting up the appointments.
What kind of sales? Say, tech companies generally do a demo of the product, so setting up those kind of appointments and things like that.
One is setting up those appointments, then lead verification. In fact, so we've started selling high ticket size items as well. Then automobile.
And this would be like a cold call or a call to someone who filled a form on a website or something.
It's kind of both.
Because that is again you're adding a lot more value then, because then you're doing revenue generation, so you can capture more of the value if you start doing, like, sales is obviously every business's lifeblood. So
Exactly.
amazing. So it seems like the opportunity is huge in India. Why go to the US right now? For example, like telcos is an unscratched market for you right now, right? And telcos would be a massive market.
In India itself? Absolutely. So you're right. India is a huge market. No doubt about that. And in fact, as a market, it's just scratching the surface.
Yeah, 15 companies is just there is so much potential for you here.
Absolutely. So, see, it's like there is a certain consumption or a capacity for an industry, for a geography. And we are already maximizing, and we are expanding as well. As Rashi said, we are hiring for 50 positions right now. So while we are expanding, while we are consuming this market, we would need more geographies to be added to fill up our capacity or our hunger, I would say, for growth. And if you seed a new market, that new market itself has a gestation period of 12 to 18 months. So if you start now, that you will see the results in next 18 months, not today. And that's the reason why adding new market is important. Plus, what it also gives is a much better stability, much better learning of the feature sets or the use cases and the product evolution.
Your product becomes obviously going to US would help the product also grow because they that customer is a lot more demanding.
Exactly.
Okay, okay. Who are the other companies in this space?
So there are companies in different kind of sections. So there are like the likes of Unifor and Observe, which are sitting more on the data analytics part or the speech analytics part. Then there are the likes,
So they would be like monitoring human conversations and sharing like a dashboard with.
also nudging them, prompting them as to what next to speak. Those kind of things are there. Then there are players like,
How big a part of your revenue is this? You also do this, right? Like monitoring.
yes, so we do this. Doesn't have that much of contribution to our top line today, but in terms of our pipeline, I would say almost one third of the sales pipeline and the pilots that we have is this. Then there are obviously players like Cognigy, there are ASAP, then Verint, to some extent. So these are the players.
I've not heard of these companies. What do they do?
So these are the companies in US I was talking about, which kind of focus on the voice automation, voice bots, or getting those data points, completing the workflow. So
Okay, so they are doing the conversations and transactions, etc., like talking to customers.
absolutely.
There's none in India. These are all US based.
Yes, these are all US based. There are some in India again, but as India, may things are at a very little early stage. I would say there are players like Nani. There are players like Skit. Skit has now moved to relocated to US as well. So there are players there, but again, I mean, everyone is little early stage, working on different kind of use cases. And what we've seen is, for example, Sarthi is big time into collection process only, and although we have a massive rollouts and massive deployments in collection as well, so we do some see some competition from that perspective. Nani, on the other hand, is majorly into the government side. Those things are there. So again,
Government side, like political campaigning and all, or promotion of schemes, government schemes, etc. Like,
I think that as well, we're working with different government entities. So again, I mean, there is, as I said, there is ample of opportunity, ample of stuff to be done, and the market is opening up. But then at the same time, market really wants to have evolved products, because no one wants to have unfinished product and get a backlash from the customers.
okay, okay, got it. Okay, what's your plan to like open more accounts in India? Because uh, any company which has more than, let's say, 10,000 headcount would have at least 10-20% of their workforce doing this kind of calling role. So there is a lot of opportunity here. What's the way in which you think you can capture it? Like, how can you, what's the way to grow your sales pipeline?
We want to grow fast. In fact, we've been growing almost 3x, three times year on year for the last 2 years. And we expect the same growth going forward as well. I think probably one of the big thing that we bring on the table is we do not do sales that much. We are focusing big time on the product, on the technology. We keep kind of sharpening it. There are certain outreach programs that we have, which we run, and we create have some awareness programs, letting the enterprises, the businesses know that this is what can be done, this is what we do, and we prefer it that way, because Our clear mantra is whatever we do, we need to do it good. It's We do hear a lot of enterprise coming to us and saying, Ki, we haven't even heard about you. We didn't even know that a company like you existed with this kind of a numbers, that's a scale. We were not even aware. And we are like, that's okay. Because it's okay to talk to 100 companies and not 1,000. But whatever 100 companies we talk to, we need to do a good job. We want them to be satisfied with the deliveries that we do. So it's like a balancing act that we kind of follow.
I'm wondering why none of the telcos like Airtel, Jio, Vodafone, none of them are using you. Are they already using some products, or is there a resistance to, because they I'm guessing they would have the maximum number of such calls happening,
So we work with Airtel.
which could eventually become your biggest account, right? Because Airtel would have so many such less than 3 minute calls.
Well, I would say, I mean, there are hidden gems in the industry. We know Airtel for the scale. We don't, there are other enterprises which actually operate at a much larger scale. The need is much larger.
Okay. Like NBFCs would also be doing a lot of collection calls.
Oh, yes. See, I'll also tell you a very interesting use case. Let's say in the collection process, only every enterprise, let's say, given an enterprise X, they would have, let's say, 1,000 agents doing a certain function, a certain collection process. But their books are so huge, so much of work to be done. 1,000 people cannot reach out to each and every customer, whoever is there in the queue for the collection. They'll just probably pick the top 10% of by.
They prioritize and
Exactly, exactly. So that prioritization probably will, they'll only be able to touch 10% of the customers. But the 90% goes unserved. But a solution like Rezo, there is no scale problem. Probably even with our kind of offerings, the bottom 10% would not make sense in terms of the ROI, but it's the middle 80% which is there up for grabs, right? So when we look at only at the call center, we're probably looking at the 1,000, which is like handling the top 10%, but the actual opportunity is for 10,000, right? So these are the hidden gems in the industry.
what's your advice to founders who are planning to start, and because you've scaled up to soon to be 10 million with no external fundraise, so what kind of advice would you like?
Like, just we had one funding. It was a seed round 3 years back, and at the beginning of the COVID.
So what advice would you like to give to aspiring founders?
So my suggestion would be that you have to be very clear in the beginning itself. VC money is good, but you need to be very clear that are you going or doing your business to raise money, or you are raising money to grow the business. That visibility, that clarity has to be there. Both have their own pros and cons. That is important. That's point number one. Point number two is have your family, your friends, your social circle, a good circle around you who which can morally support you, because this is gonna be a hell lot of a journey.